James Hacker. I have a question concerning the LGBTQ community and Scientology. It seems like Scientology pretends to love us, but the tone scale says differently. Celebrities such as Kirstie Alley, Elizabeth Moss, and Laura Prepon have denied that being LGBTQ is wrong in Scientology. Is it possible that, being VIP Scientologists, they're sheltered from the truth, or are they straight up lying? Okay, James, thank you for your question. And while this has certainly been addressed many times, let me now actually go to the sacred texts of Dianetics and Scientology to answer this question, because here's the deal with the celebrities. They do the same Scientology that everybody else does. They are treated differently with the VIP treatment, but the auditing processes and the books and the lectures that they listen to and read are the same. All of those celebrities, Kirstie Alley, Elizabeth Moss, Laura Prepon, certainly Tom Cruise, certainly John Travolta even, actually, have read what I'm about to read you, because these come from the seminal works of Dianetics, which is Dianetics, The Modern Science of Mental Health, which I'll read from first, and then the second book of Dianetics, which came out in 1951, called Science of Survival. Especially since 2004, there's been a massive push on all Scientologists to read these books. Prior to 2003, 2004, where I can't remember exactly what year the basics came out, all the revisions were done of the basic Scientology texts and lectures. And that was a massive thing. But prior to that time, it could have been possible that you could be a Dianeticist or rather a Scientologist and not have read Dianetics. For years, it could have been that way, that you'd never even approached it or, sort of skimmed it or something. It wasn't necessarily on any of the coursework that you were going to do, at least not for quite a while, until you got, at least up to what was called the solo, or is called the solo auditor course, which is after you go clear or on your way to getting to clear, you have to get trained to engage in what's called solo auditing, where you're going to sit in a room and audit yourself. That is an advanced thing to be doing in Scientology. So at that point, on that course, is when people would read Dianetics. And Science of Survival wasn't even on that course. You had to do a different course called the PTS-SP course in order to be exposed to Science of Survival. And not everybody was doing that until Miscavige put it down and really started emphasizing that people had to do those services. And they did a whole revision on the PTS-SP course. And that was done, of course, to convince Scientologists that if anybody was hostile or antagonistic or critical of Dianetics or Scientology, they were SPs. They were bad guys. They were antisocial personalities. That's the entire reason you do the PTS-SP course, is to find out who the SPs are. And basically, the course tells you anybody who doesn't like Scientology. Obviously, there's a little more nuance to it than that, but that's the basic bottom line of it. So the point is that since 2004, everybody's been covering this material. You will be hard pressed to find somebody in Scientology these days who hasn't read this stuff. And I talked in my podcast yesterday, which I encourage y'all to see. I talked about confirmation bias and predictive and how the brain works and stuff. And I'm not going to cover that stuff again, but I will say that you're getting hit with it so hard here. And you're hit with it two different places, Dianetics and Science of Survival, that it's a little hard to read this material and not get the point that Hubbard's making. I mean, he's pretty clear about this, and I'm going to read it to you so you get what I'm talking about. So first, let us read from the scriptures from Dianetics. Hubbard writes, this is, again, 1950. Here we go. The sexual pervert, and by this term, Dianetics, to be brief, includes any and all forms of deviation in dynamic 2, which is having to do with sex, such as homosexuality, lesbianism, sexual sadism, etc., and all down the catalog of Ellis and Kraft Ebing. Okay, so he says the sexual pervert, and then that was all in parentheses. So the sexual pervert is actually quite ill physically. Perversion as an illness has so many manifestations that it must be spread through the entire gamut of classes from 1 to 5 above. Overdevelopment of sexual organs, underdevelopment, seminal inhibition or magnification, etc., are found some in one pervert, some in another. And the sum of it is that the pervert is always a very ill person in one way or another, whether he is conscious of it or not. He is very far from culpable for his condition, but he is also so far from normal and so extremely dangerous to society that the tolerance of perversion is as thoroughly bad for society as punishment for it. Lacking proper means prior to this time, society has been caught between tolerance and punishment, and the problem of perversion has, of course, not been resolved. Okay, so that is pretty clear, right? Hubbard also later says that the pervert contains hundreds and hundreds of vicious engrams, has had little choice between being dead and being a pervert. So Hubbard, you can see here, is in the 1950s mentality of, conservative Christian America, and, post World War II values and Midwest values, which is how Hubbard was brought up. He's putting all of this into here to say that pretty clearly that tolerating perversion, such as lesbianism, homosexuality, etc., is tolerating a kind of psychosis or mental illness. And that Dianetics is the thing that finally offers a solution so that we don't have to punish these poor people anymore for that which they are not responsible for as perverts. They were born or, have experienced all these engrams, and so that's why they are the way they are, the poor things. And so here is now Dianetics to save the day and offer a humane solution to the problem. Yeah. This is still current work in Scientology. People who will go into an org right now will read this stuff. Okay, in Science of Survival, you mentioned in your question, James, the tone scale. And the tone scale is an emotional chart that claims that you can predict human behavior based on a person's emotional responses and where a person is both temporarily in an emotional state and chronically on a long-term basis. Hubbard says people tend to gravitate towards a particular emotional state or tone level. And this is how you can predict their behavior over time on different subjects. And Science of Survival pretends to be a manual on the prediction of human behavior, using these emotions as the guide. And each emotion is assigned a numeric value, and 1.1 on the scale. And the tone scale goes from 40 at the top to minus 40 at the bottom. So 1.1 is the level of what is called covert hostility. And in each chapter of Science of Survival, Hubbard breaks down behavior in a particular area or part of life or how they'll respond to therapy or treatment even. And he breaks it down level by level on this chart. So here he is describing communication, and I thought this might be interesting to you as far as further information about what Hubbard says about homosexuality and how perverts will respond or communicate. He says at 1.1, we have lying to avoid real communication. Okay, again, this is covert hostility. This is the image that's connected with this 1.1 is the guy who's smiling while he's holding a knife behind his back and is just waiting to get it into you. That's 1.1 in a nutshell. So Hubbard connects that with perversion as follows. He says, they have lying to avoid real communication. It takes the form of pretended agreement, flattery, or verbal appeasement, or simply a false picture of the person's feelings and ideas, a false facade, an artificial personality. Here is the level of covert hostility, the most dangerous and wicked level on the tone scale. Here is the person who smiles while he inserts a knife blade between your vertebrae. Here is the person who tells you how he has stood up for you when actually he has practically destroyed your reputation. Here is the insincere flatterer who yet awaits only a moment of unguardedness to destroy. The conversation of this level is filled with small barbs, which are immediately afterwards justified as intended compliments. Talking with such a person is the maddening procedure of boxing with a shadow. One realizes that something is wrong, but the guardedness of a 1.1 will not admit anything wrong, even as, all the while, he does his best to upset and wreak havoc. This is the level of the pervert, the homosexual, the turncoat. This is the level of the subversive. Okay, so again, direct quote from L. Ron Hubbard's works from 1950, 1951, which you can pretty much be assured anybody who's been involved in Dianetics or Scientology for any length of time, and I'd say maybe more than a year at this point, is going to start being exposed to this. And the celebrities, again, no exception. So do they know this? Have they read this? Yeah, they have. Should they know that this is what it says when they're making public statements about it? Absolutely, because even if they haven't personally read or seen this material, let's go crazy far out of our way to give them the benefit of the doubt that they haven't read this material. This is public information. Nothing I read to you right now is confidential. You can go into a bookstore and pick up Dianetics and read exactly what I just read to you. So would it even be that they would get a pass if they said that Dianetics or Scientology is, pro-LGBT or doesn't have a problem with LGBT, knowing that this is what Hubbard wrote in public level books, right? Even if they don't personally know, when they're making public statements, they are making them based on what they were briefed on by their handlers, their celebrity handlers in Scientology. So somebody, if they're saying that these things I read to you are not true, or that that's not the way it is now in Scientology, somebody's lying to somebody. And if they don't have the ability to do their own due diligence about their own religion and tell the truth about it, then what does that say about them as people? And that's kind of where we're at with this. And Scientology celebrities are liars. All you got to do is look at what L. Ron Hubbard actually wrote, and also understand that no Scientologist has an option to not buy into that. They don't get to make a choice and say, well, that's not true. I don't think that's real. I don't think that all homosexuals are, or all, LGBTQ are not liars, are not 1-1. You don't get to get away with saying that within the world of Scientology. If you do, you're going to be sat down in front of somebody and you're going to be clearing up a lot of words and a lot of dictionaries until you agree with what Hubbard wrote, as I've gone over. So that's the truth of the matter, James. And I thought I'd give a really thorough answer with the quotes this time. So it's not just from my own opinion or experience. So there you go.